Honourable Shane Jones.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A day of economic liberation has arrived. There will be a small range of critics against this bill, but let us just recount that the element which has caused the opposite side of the House to recoil actually comes from their own legislation. They passed a piece of legislation which sadly is destroying large parts of the economy, otherwise known as climate change legislation. And in that legislation is the opportunity for the government of the day to use a general policy statement to indicate the direction of travel. So to show the spirit of bipartisanship, we have borrowed that small device, and we will now have the government able to affirm those sectors of the industry who are looking for leadership from the government to create jobs, to create investment and to grow the economy. There is nothing to fear. This general policy statement device will be judged within the statutory criteria which people can challenge. That is how you grow an economy. Now, of course, our side of the House has a different view than those who want to wrap the environment in some sort of ideological bubble paper. No, our focus is ensuring that the actual guardrails are consistent with not only the purpose of the statute, but we must grow our economy. Now, no doubt it'll come to pass that Mr Bishop and the fine minds that have put together the Replacement Resource Management Act, of course, I had some modest association with that 35 years ago, and apparently that was on television recently. 34 years ago, there is a small change in anatomy. However, it shows greater wisdom can be measured in the size of the puku. Those changes provide an opportunity in the future, but we need a transition, Madam Speaker, and the fast track is a guaranteed transition. We also have the ability to ensure that iwi, such as Ngāi Tahu, don't have their aspirations and their objectives hobbled or blighted. What happened is that they made an application called Hananui. 3 unelected, ill-prepared, hopefully never to be seen again, grandees destroyed that application, which is why the legislation ensures that imposters, those with fake competence, never have the opportunity to sit again and make decisions and undermine Māori endeavour. Of course, there have been some surprises, I have to say, in the development of the fast-track practice. Now, I knew within Taranaki there'd be the predictable banshees, very upset about progress. And then what's happened? When they couldn't beat me with intellect, they decided to invoke the Taranaki Mountain. They decided to enable the maunga to send off a puff of smoke, but the maunga has to come to the matua, not the other way round, So this piece of legislation is going to open up the environment. Now, you do need boldness and you need courage to stand up, and nowhere have we seen a greater demonstration of that than by the Minister for Infrastructure. Turbocharge energy. A nation that does not have an energy plan has no economic plan. Now, as this legislation accelerates the delivery of new sources of energy, coal, and please remember that famous saying from the Thatcher era, coal before dole. Now, it may sound awkward, it may sound slightly jarring to the tender ears of those who bring Parliament pantomime devices, unnecessary rhetoric to the House every day as opposed to us more moderate contributors. Gold, and in addition to that, critical minerals. Such things would never happen unless we had the far-sighted authors and architects of this legislation. Now, inevitably, there will be continued criticism. But you cannot grow rich by doing each other's Green Party washing or greenwashing our nation or snaffling the nation in brown tape. That is why this is such an overdue development. Of course it stands up for capitalism. That's what defines this side of the House. and those who want to live in ideological bubble wrap. Socialists, communists, but it's a contest of ideas. It's a contest of ideas. Now, Madam Speaker, I'm willing to admit that there are contributions worthy of the intellect of Mickey Mouse, but we are not running the economy in a cartoonish way. We are going to the pith of the issue. International investors, domestic investors, with confidence that our new overseas investment. Now, it is not us deploying the chilliness of Antarctica to freeze investment. It is the other side of the House. Now, I don't believe that we'll have to make any more refinements to this brilliant piece of legislation prior to the election, largely because they are going to be so busy, the three conveners, subject to their performance. Once or thrice I might have called them the three daughters of King Lear. The fact that they have complained that we, presumably they were talking about one of three MPs, myself included, had lost confidence in the process. This was a clear demonstration the sovereignty of Parliament is beyond the tender mercies of the three daughters of King Lear, otherwise known as the conveners. They are paid to do a job which is administrative and apply the law in such a way that the black letter meaning of the law trumps any other fantasies or any other concoctions which only seek to scare and intimidate those people who want to create a better future for them. Nowhere is that future needed than in Taranaki. The last regime, as you know, destroyed the oil and gas industry. Not content with doing that, they destroyed and sold Marsden Point, closed it down, sold it down the river. What do we see in the schedule? An opportunity to reinvigorate those areas. Now, what could possibly be wrong with that? Some might say you're trampling on the rights of the hapu and the tangata whenua of their takutai moana. Those rights play second fiddle to the purpose of this statute, which is based on cohesiveness, collective strength, and growing the economy. No single hapu has a veto right to trample or hobble the development of our nation. And that is why my name is resounding from Port Waikato right down to Waikarai through the vast swathe of Taranaki. But look, I don't want to sound too triumphant. I don't want to sound unnecessarily immodest. I just want to put on the record that this piece of legislation was wisely inserted into the negotiations in 2023 by my leader, Winston Peters, because he could see that the last regime had a contribution, otherwise known as fast track, but it was stymieing, it was hobbling, it was covering the ambitions to grow the country in ideological treacle. We are a common sense bunch of contributors, and common sense shows us that, yes, we ought to observe the existing Treaty of Waitangi settlements, but they must contribute to the growth of the nation. Now, sadly, development, frogs, bats, birds, they all have to enjoy the cleansing experience of trade-off. Trade-offs are what is necessary in order to grow your economy. It doesn't say that we're declaring war on nature. And Freddie's not going to die occasionally in the departure lounge once or thrice. We've got to stop all this catastrophization, which is why Mr. Bishop has delivered an overdue dose of common sense. And with the small amendments and refinements, including competitiveness in the supermarket sector, who could possibly complain for those who are interested in the patriotic development of our nation? Now, there will be a small group who believe that iwi separatism is the proper construction or interpretation of the treaty. They can't even get 1% of support. How can they talk about sovereignty when their own sovereignty in their party is fatally cracked? It's like an egg. The egg soon addles and rots once the shell is cracked. And sadly, that egg is not only cracked, but please turn the lights out because the party is over. So coming back, Madam Speaker, our party this minister, with a long experience in economic development, resource management, and the most authoritative voice in the recent history of Māori development, supports this act.